You can talk now, Coach.
I'm not sure if I can talk. Last fall, Rubel asked if he could meet with me on a Friday about 2:30. When I went to the meeting that Friday and I walked inside the conference room, the entire administrative staff was sitting there. John Barton, Brian Stogner, Mark Van Reenen, and my son Clint. Now, going back to my school days, these types of scenarios never worked in my best interest. But as I sat down, I thought, surely they won't fire me in front of my son. Rubel then handed me a flyer with Don's picture and my picture on it and talked about this evening. And I reminded Rubel of the time he told me that a university wanted to honor him and his wife, and he just said no. And I asked if I had an option, and he said no. And so I stand here today honored. I stand thankful. I stand a little bit embarrassed. I stand a little bit, I'm uncomfortable. And the reason is because there's other people that should be up here. People like Larry and Lynn Stewart, Mel Storm, John Todd, Gordon McKinnon, Ken Hoggett, and others who have done so much for the college. I just happen to be blessed that my discipline received some media attention. But please bear with me just a moment as I feel compelled to recognize some today. First of all, I say thank you to Rubel and Myra. I don't know if they will ever know how much they mean to the Rochester community. I believe with all my heart I would not be standing here today if it hadn't have been for Rubel and Myra Shelley. And I've told Rubel before, I don't know what I ever did to deserve his friendship. But Rubel and Myra have been an incredible blessing to Pat and me. I also say thank you to Don, Meyer, and Carmen. I first met Don in the early 70s. And nobody has influenced my coaching career like Don Meyer. Mike Roller, you probably would say the same thing. Tim Morton, you would probably say the same thing. And other coaches. There are thousands of coaches all over the country. But Coach, I think what I appreciate even more about you is how you always treated young kids. You know, my own grandson has a picture of Don on the refrigerator. When I told him about Coach's accident, and I told him that he had to lose his leg, Palmer said, is he going to have to get a stick? Stick leg. I said, yeah. He said, tell him to get a long one. And I overheard Palmer trying to describe Coach Meyer to one of his little buddies. The winningest coach in basketball history and all that. And then he said, he's sort of like a grandpa to me. He's not my grandpa, but he's sort of like my grandpa. And Coach is like that to all little kids. And then another lesson that Coach has taught me. And probably only my son Clint, Coach Roller, Coach Eric Sims, we're maybe been the only one that have seen this, is how he treats people who are less fortunate than he is, people who are developmentally delayed, the Chuck Rosses of the world. He's a special person, and so I say thank you to him today. Pat and I have sponsored 2 tables, one in honor and memory of my mom and dad, and many of you here from the Flint area remember them, and also a table in honor of my father-in-law, Lucian Palmer, the godliest man I've ever known, and my mentor, my friend, Coach Shinsky. And I think about him weekly. Where's Mrs. Shinsky? This is Mrs. Shinsky. There you are. Thank you. I'm honored to have my family with me today, my extended family. And, they really can't believe these things have happened to me. My sister Paige and her husband Dennis and their daughters Kelly and Jody and their husbands Tom and Jim. My cousin Brent and his wife Letha flew in from Austin. Now they're going to Sutton's Bay, but it was nice of them to come in a little bit early. And my cousin Nancy and her husband Ray are here. And, I always had a bond with my cousin Nancy. She always was like really cool to my little eyes. And she's always been special. Now, my cousin Nancy is the only person left on this earth who has spanked my bare behind. I was taking a bath on the 2nd floor, and there was a register there, and she was babysitting me, and I called her to look up. And she looked up, and I could not, I have a little speech impediment. If you listen real good, you can hear it. But I couldn't pronounce R's. And she looked up, I said, "It's waning," and I threw water on her. And I must have been about 5, and she came upstairs and took me out of the bathtub, and she blistered my behind. And she says that I'm the meanest kid that she ever knew. And I can't believe the stories are true that she tells about me, but I'm grateful that they're here. I also have a table of friends that I wanted to be my guest. Frank Rewald and his wife Kathy are over here, but over at this table is Bill Fox and his wife Shirley, Mr. and Mrs. Rewald, and Roger Knapp and his wife Jane. And I thought Bill Potier was in Florida, but is he here today? Maybe not. And John Coe's not here. I don't know what I've done to deserve your friendship. These guys have done so much for our program, our basketball program, and I'm indebted to you. And Roger, I figured our friendship goes back 40 years. You introduced me to everybody. And probably outside my own family, I've spent more time with you than anybody. Michigan football games, Pistons games, Tiger games, high school games, and back in the 70s, those tough men fights at the Silverdome, and you used to drool at that stuff. And then there's my immediate family, and Rubel summed it up perfectly. Before I go on to my immediate family, I am so honored. The man who was responsible for me being a basketball coach, my high school coach, is with us today, Coach King. I was fortunate to play on some great teams with Coach. And he was a great coach, but just a better person. I had my JV coach who I loved. He used to say, if you fouled and you've got you've got 2 fouls, somebody else who doesn't have a foul raise their hand. And Coach King says, when I got to varsity, we don't do that. My JV coach would say, if you knock somebody down, pick him up, and when you pick him up, give him a knee. Coach King said we don't do that. You know, and for all the years since I've graduated, I've talked to Coach King about every year. And I always, before I hang up, will say, Coach, thank you for everything you did for me. Because I know I was a high-strung, emotional kid that probably gave you some headaches. But in front of, everyone here today, I want to say thank you for everything. I have so many former players here. I just saw Kelvin Brown. I can't believe he flew all the way from Houston, Texas. But Mike Roller has already been here. Mike was my first captain. Mike was a better coach as a player than I was as a coach. And he's become one of my dearest friends, and I miss him, all the time. And Coach Meyer described him as being one of the top 3 high school coaches in the country. And he's a special person. And my first student assistant coach, Tim Spann, is here. And I never think of Tim without smiling. And what a blessing, and so many more. In my immediate family, Rubel just summed it up so well. Kim and Clint and Johnny and their spouses and our children, Randy and Rachel and Aaron. Rochester's been our lives. And you're right, and Rubel is right. You don't know how proud I am of you, children, and everything that you've accomplished. And I tell people, nobody has helped me with my theology more than my children. And to the lady I love, I'll never forget the first time that I saw Pat. I was a freshman at the college sitting at the old Rochester Church of Christ building. And on one side of me was Jan Green, Jan Reimer now. Her mother was Martha Green, the authoress of Life of Wings and Martha, Martha. And on the other side was Norma Cagle. And Pat got up. She had to go to work early. Her first job was with Roger Knapp at Knapp's Dairy Bar. And Pat, how much did he pay you an hour? She always a quarter. And Roger would say, I can't believe I paid that much. But when she was walking out, I said, who is that? And Norma and Jan looked at me and they said, forget it. Okay. But, I owe everything to her. I've been able to have my dream job because of her. And she's worked jobs that she didn't want to work so I could work at the college. And she's even suffered, her health has suffered because of that. And she really is the Hall of Famer in our family. And those of you know our family, that she is. She's the real Hall of Famer. Okay, last fall when I agreed to do this, I'm taking, he's going to take as much time as he wants anyhow, so. But Cook's Dairy closes at 5, so you better hurry up. When I told Rubel I would do this, I said, but it has to be about Rochester College. This has to be about Rochester. Now, I want you to know that I never apologize about what Rochester College does not have. I always tell people what we have to offer. One time I was at a dinner and some guy said, how do you recruit against all these schools? And I started to tell him how I approached it. And he sort of smiled. He said, he's got the pitch down, doesn't he? It really irritated me. And I wanted just to punch him. But if telling the truth is having a pitch, then I've got a pitch. I believe Rochester College offers something that no other institution in Metro Detroit area can offer. And I never apologize for Rochester College, what we don't have. Coach introduced me to a book years ago entitled Make the Big Time Where You Are. Westerway? Yeah, Frosty Westerway. And I've tried to live by that in my efforts with the college. Now, I have to be honest with you, I sometimes get discouraged when I hear of former supporters of the college who have forgotten us or have been critical of us, and they say that we have changed. And the college has changed. And a lot of things that the college has changed, I've endorsed. Some are things that I probably wouldn't have done. But everything changes. My Bible professor at Lipscomb, Batzel Baxter, preached a sermon on the continuing restoration about the church. The church continues to change. But what I say is that Rochester College, even though she has changed, she is not changed in the core fundamental being that the school was based on. And that is God, through this institution, helps change the lives of young people. God working through this great institution to change the lives of young people for the kingdom. Our students will take their spring breaks and they don't go to some Caribbean island to drink or whatever. They'll go to the Cass Corridor to work with the homeless. They get on a bus and they go to Louisiana where Katrina happened. They take their summer vacation and they go to Uganda and places like that with the Bartons to work with underprivileged kids. That is God working through this institution, changing the lives of young people. Let me tell you two stories. Larry Norman, I've got the soccer balls and volleyballs. Don't forget me. He's going to Uganda this week. Okay, tomorrow we got to get those. I was scouting. Got to take care of business. I was scouting a game at Oxford a number of years ago. After the game, I was waiting to talk to a player, and the referees walked by. And one of the referees looked at me and said, "Are you Garth Pleasant?" I said, "I am." And he told me who he was, and he was a young kid at one of the middle schools, and he watched our teams play, Coach. His name was Steve Johnson. And his partner looked at me and he said, "Garth," he said, "I've heard about your college and how it affects young people. I've got a son that really needs some encouragement, some help." I took his name, I called the kid, and I met him at the end of July at our campus down by the gym. He pulled in a red convertible Mustang. He got out, he walked over to me, and his shirt was unbuttoned to his navel with gold chains. His hair is slicked back. And when he left, I looked at my assistant and I said, "That boy's as wild as a March hare." He played baseball for me, and we were about the first or second week in school. I invited him down to my office to have a come to Jesus meeting with him. But, let me just fast forward about 5 years later. I got invited to Rivercrest right next to the school. And I went in, there's about 300 people there, and I don't know anybody except Brad, the young man. And Brad had just bought a one-way ticket to Malawi, Africa, to spend his life working with orphans. And he got up on that stage, and he said to me, but he's talking to Rochester College. I was Rochester College representative, and he thanked me that Rochester College gave a kid a chance. Rochester College has changed, but not in its core value of changing the lives of young people. We had won back-to-back national championships. We lost in 2006 and could have easily won. I made a very difficult decision, and about 2 weeks before we left for the tournament, arguably one of my best players appeared on Facebook in a scene that did not represent our program, and I removed him from the team. And we lost to the team that won the state championship, this national championship, by a point. In the locker room, Ty, just a little point guard, tough as nails, and he's just sobbing, crying. And it's 30 minutes afterwards, and he runs everybody out of the locker room, and he says, "Coach," and he's crying, "sit down." And I sit down, and I put my arm around him, and he said, "Coach." I said, "What, Ty?" He said, "I love you." And I says, "Well, Ty, I love you too." And he grabs me, says, "No, I love you. I never knew about God until I came to Rochester College." Ty graduated yesterday with a master's degree in religion, and he and his wife and 2 little boys have committed 10 years of their life to work in Zimbabwe coming up. Ty? The young man next to him, did I get that right? Tanzania, same thing. Next to Ty is Adam Hancius, who is a math teacher at Rochester High School. He was a 3-time academic All-American. He is set over here. And him and his wife and their child to be born soon are going with Ty and his wife and children to Tanzania for 10 years. Adam? I can go on examples like Ty and Adam. And some of you are sitting right here today. But that's Rochester College. And that's the message that needs to get out. Rochester College does something that no other college in this area does, and that is change kids' life for the kingdom of God. And so today, you're very kind. I'm overwhelmed. But I want you to embrace Rochester College. I want you to make Rochester College part of your daily prayers. And when you hear of something that you might like or agree, or you might not like or agree with, remember that God still works through this great institution to change the lives of young people. And I'm not a fundraiser, but I can tell you how each one of you can give the school $25,000 without writing a check. I'd like for you to go back and recruit or give us one name of a student that you think might need this college. And I'm going to ask our enrollment service to send all of you a letter in asking you for a name. I hope, if you don't like it, fire me. Yeah. Yeah. Rubel says if you can't think of a name, just send the $25,000. I just think a student is better because you have the opportunity of a kid like myself, like so many of these young guys, to change their life. I tried to live this, what Johnny Wooden said. I haven't nearly been as effective with it as Johnny Wooden was, as Mike Roller has been, as Coach Meyer has been. But I really like this. I consider it a sacred trust, helping to mold character, instill productive principles and values, and provide a positive example to those under my supervision. John Wooden. Thank you for this special day, but thank God for Rochester College.